It started with a spotlight. Not a real one, but the kind you feel burning through your skin when the laughter around you is too loud, too forced, and too directed at you. The music throbbed in the background of a rooftop party I never wanted to attend. Neon lights flickered over strangers' faces, and I stood there, gripping a glass of something warm and useless. The rooftop was buzzing with over-laughter and cologne-soaked egos, but I wasn't focused on any of that. I was watching my wife, Kira. She laughed too easily that night. Too loud. Too bright. Her eyes scanned the crowd like she was hungry for something she hadn't had in a while. And maybe, just maybe, she was. It was supposed to be Samira's birthday, Kira's coworker. I didn't know Samira. I didn't care to. But Kira had begged me to come. Just for an hour, Nolan, she'd said, already in her heels. Please. It'll mean a lot. So I went. And that was my first mistake. We barely got through the door before Samira dragged us into a group circled around a low coffee table stacked with half-empty cocktail glasses. Let's do something wild, she slurred, her words sticking to the edges of her lipstick-stained martini glass. Let's play truth or dare. I almost laughed. We were in our 30s, surrounded by so-called professionals with LinkedIn bios and mortgages. But Kira's eyes lit up like she was 17 again, and that should have been my second clue. It was harmless at first. Stupid dares. Ridiculous questions. Until Samira leaned forward, wine teeth flashing, and purred, Kira. Truth. If you could trade Nolan for anyone, who would it be? Laughter. Snickers. A few oaths. But I wasn't worried. Not yet. I looked at Kira and smiled. She smirked back. And then she said it. Just like that. Trade? Easy. Ethan from yoga. At least he actually listens. Boom. Laughter exploded. Glasses clinked. Someone clapped. I didn't move. I didn't blink. And that's when I felt it. Everyone looking at me, waiting for my reaction, waiting to see if I'd break. I laughed. A hollow, twisted chuckle that tasted like metal in my throat. She winked at me like it was all a joke. But something had shifted, and deep down, I knew the marriage I'd been clinging to was already halfway gone. That was the moment, the first fracture. Not the affair. Not the texts. Not the lies. That moment. That offhand comment said with wine lips and too much confidence. It was the first honest thing she'd said in weeks. On the way home, she hummed to herself while checking her phone. My fingers dug into the steering wheel so hard I left nail marks. I didn't say a word. Neither did she. When we pulled into the driveway, I stayed in the car longer than I should have, just staring at the dashboard. She was already inside, heels in one hand, tossing her keys like nothing had happened. You're mad, she called from the kitchen. No, I said, following her slowly. Just trying to figure out when I became your favorite joke. She looked at me then, and her eyes narrowed. Don't be dramatic, Nolan. It was a game. I didn't answer. I just stared. She scoffed. You're so sensitive lately. You've been distant for months, and now you want to throw a tantrum over a stupid joke. Are you sleeping with him? That stopped her. Just for a second. But it was long enough. She turned her back to me, grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge. Don't be ridiculous, she said. Ethan's a friend. I leaned against the doorway, studying the back of her. Her hair was still curled from the party. Her perfume still lingered. Do you want out? I asked, voice low. Because if this is your way of slipping away, just say it. She didn't respond. Just fiddled with the mail. Rearranged the fruit bowl. Anything to avoid me. The next morning, she was gone before I woke up. No note. No goodbye. Just silence. And that silence stretched over days. Thin, cold, bitter. Until Thursday evening. I walked into the kitchen. Same routine. Keys. Bag. Cold dinner in the fridge. Her phone buzzed. I shouldn't have touched it. But I did. One message. One line. Ethan, had an amazing time today. Miss you already. That was all it took. No need for sexts. No nudes. Just that one truth dressed up as casual affection. When she walked in, her face drained the second she saw me holding her phone. Nolan, I just needed to know, I said calmly. She crossed her arms. Defensive. Cold. It's not what you think. You had lunch. Yes. You missed him already. She hesitated. Just enough. Because he listens, I added, repeating her own words. She flinched. That's it, isn't it? I said. You just wanted to be seen. Her voice cracked. I didn't mean for this to happen. But you let it. Silence. I think you should leave, I said. No, She said quickly. No, wait. Please, Nolan. This isn't what I want. But it's what you chose. She stood there, frozen, looking like a woman watching her reflection shatter in slow motion. We can fix this. I shook my head. We don't fix what's already been burned. And for the first time in years, I meant every word. She left, and I stood there, alone, but lighter. That night, I didn't sleep alone. I slept in peace. The silence after she left wasn't empty. It was sacred. For the first time in nearly a decade, I didn't have to guess how someone felt about me. There was no passive aggression folded into dinner conversations, no performative kisses before bed. Just air. Crisp, untouched air that I could finally breathe without coughing on someone else's indifference. But that peace didn't last long. 3 days after Kira walked out with her lipstick still fresh and her excuses barely stitched together, she returned. She didn't knock, just walked in with that fake authority she used to carry like a purse. What the hell is this? She snapped, eyes on the boxes I'd neatly stacked by the front door. Her clothes, her makeup, her high heels I used to trip over. Exactly what you wanted, I said, setting my coffee mug down. A clean break. You don't get to decide that, she barked, and there was again the lie that she still had control. You already did when you picked him. Her jaw twitched. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. She paced the kitchen, arms folded, muttering things under her breath, like she was still trying to write the narrative. Like she could still edit the truth before it reached me. I was lonely, she finally whispered, and I almost laughed. You weren't lonely, Kira, I said, walking over to her slowly. You were bored. You wanted attention, and you found someone who gave it to you without having to earn it. She stared at me like she couldn't recognize the man in front of her. And maybe she couldn't, because I was no longer her Nolan. The man who bent, folded, tolerated. That man died the night she publicly served me up as a punchline in front of half-tipsy strangers. She tried again. We can still fix this. I raised an eyebrow. With what? Duct tape? We're not broken, Kira. We're done. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again like she was drowning in air she used to own. But she still left that night. Again. And I still didn't chase her. What came next wasn't anger. It wasn't vengeance. Not yet. It was clarity. For weeks, I kept my head down. I took time off work, deleted every picture of her from my phone, packed away every memory into digital folders labeled things like June_trip and wedding_crap, because the real titles would have been far less polite. And I began rebuilding. Not us. Me. I started waking at 5 a.m. No snooze button. Just silence, black coffee, and a cold morning jog through the old trail by the reservoir. I dropped 10 pounds in 2 weeks. Bought weights. Ate clean. Read books. Real books. Not productivity crap, but philosophy, history, psychology. Anything that reminded me the world was wider than my broken marriage. But most importantly, I started watching. Not in the stalker sense. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. She came to me. Through texts. Nolan, can we talk? Nolan, I miss you. Nolan, I made a mistake. I didn't answer. Not because I was cruel, but because silence was louder than any word I could write. Then about a month after she left, I ran into her, by accident, at a downtown restaurant. I was on a lunch meeting with my friend Jonah, one of the few people who didn't say, I always knew something was off about her, because real friends don't celebrate your pain. She was 2 tables away. With him, Ethan. They didn't see me. She was leaning into him, all soft smiles and fake laughs. His hand brushed her knee. Her laugh tilted her head back. She looked radiant, alive, like the version of her I hadn't seen in years. I didn't feel rage. I felt something worse. Nothing. I paid the bill, left before dessert, but it planted a seed. You see, the worst kind of betrayal isn't the one that surprises you. It's the one you see coming, and still hurts anyway. So I did something I never thought I would. I opened a new folder on my laptop. Reset. Inside it, I started outlining what I now call the long goodbye. Not for her. For me. A way to take every ounce of hurt, humiliation, and heartbreak, and forge it into something surgical. Precise. Clean. I started learning. Quietly. About her accounts. Her movements. Her social media habits. The way she posts on Instagram once a week. Never more. Always just enough to suggest perfection. I noticed she deleted our wedding photo from her feed, but didn't change her last name. Curious. I checked her LinkedIn, still using my last name. Still claiming founder of the side business we had started, though she hadn't touched it in months. That's when the idea came. Not revenge. Leverage. She'd forgotten something very important. Half of that business still legally belonged to me. The branding, the trademark, the site, all of it registered in my name. She was using my name to rebuild her life, and I was going to take it back. But not yet. The best revenge isn't a strike. It's a storm you don't see until the sky caves in. So I waited. I crafted. I smiled politely at everyone who asked, "How's Kira doing?" and lied through my teeth. She's doing what she needs to, which was true. She needed to fall, and she would, because you can only steal someone's light for so long before it burns you. There's a moment in every chess match when the opponent still thinks they're winning, right before they realize they've been playing your game the entire time. That was the moment I was building toward. I started by quietly taking everything she thought I'd forgotten, documents, passwords, licensing info, and shifting it behind digital walls. Legally, strategically, silently. See, when Kira and I started the artisan fragrance business 2 years ago, she wanted it to be her thing. I let her take the spotlight. What was my money? My business background. My marketing work behind the site, the ads, the name. The name she still used as her personal brand online. But I was done being the silent partner. I paid a discreet corporate lawyer to begin the transfer process. No warning. No emails. Just action. Step 1. Revoke her access to the shared business bank account. Step 2. Pull the website under my sole admin control. Step 3. Schedule an official rebranding announcement under a different name, mine. All this, while publicly, I remained silent. Cordial. Respectful, as she liked to call it. She had no clue, because in her mind, I was still broken, still licking my wounds. She assumed I was spending nights crying old playlists or scrolling through her photos. And maybe early on I had. But now I was awake. An awakening is a dangerous thing, especially when the person you betrayed is intelligent, patient, and no longer emotionally tied to your survival. Then came the dinner. It was a friend's birthday. Neutral ground. My friend, not hers. I didn't expect her to be there, but she walked in wearing the same dress she'd worn on our 4th anniversary. I noticed. I'm sure she wore it intentionally, like she was trying to remind me of a version of her that no longer existed. Ethan was with her. He looked uncomfortable the whole night. Maybe he knew. Maybe she'd told him bits of our story, edited to make herself the victim, of course. She approached during dessert. "I didn't know you'd be here," she said. Clearly. She gave me a tight smile. "You look different." "I am." She licked her lips nervously. "I heard you've been working out." I nodded once, calm. "And reading. And traveling. And reorganizing." A flicker of something behind her eyes. Reorganizing. I didn't elaborate. Let her guess. She blinked, glancing back at Ethan, who was caught in a hollow conversation with someone he clearly didn't know. "He's not what you think," she whispered suddenly. I raised a brow. "You're right. I don't think about him at all." She flinched, then recovered quickly. "You always had that cold edge," she said, trying to provoke something. But I wasn't cold. I was clear. She left the party early. I stayed, chatted with everyone, laughed genuinely. I hadn't done that in years. That week, I received a furious voicemail from her. "Nolan, I don't know what the hell you're doing, but I can't access anything. The site's locked, the business account is frozen, and I just got a notification about trademark transfer. What the hell?" I didn't answer. Instead, I mailed her a certified letter. Professional, polite, perfectly legal. Due to the recent dissolution of marriage and the lack of contribution to the brand over the last fiscal year, Nolan Gentry will now assume sole ownership of Kira and Company. Yeah, I even took her name out of it. She showed up at my apartment 3 days later, furious, screaming, crying. "You think this is revenge?" she shrieked in the hallway. "You think this is justice?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't open the door. I just spoke through it. "No, Kira. This is called consequence. I built that brand." "No, you posed for it." "I built it." Silence. Then a slap against the door. "You're a coward." "No, I'm just done being your idiot." I heard her break. Not physically. Emotionally. There's a sound people make when they realize they're not the hero of their own story anymore. That sound came through the wood, thick and guttural. But I wasn't done. 2 weeks later, I launched the rebranded site. It blew up. Turns out, people like my story. The honesty. The shift. I framed it as a rebirth after betrayal and sold thousands of new fragrance kits in the first month. I didn't name her. I didn't have to. But people knew. And Kira? She tried everything. Emails, lawyers, social media posts. But everything she wrote sounded bitter and confused. She had no proof of anything under her name. Because I'd done the paperwork. Years ago. Before I ever thought I'd need it. And the best part? Ethan dumped her. Apparently, she'd been spiraling. Needy. Obsessive. He couldn't take it. She posted one final selfie on Instagram. Tear-streaked. Vague caption about losing everything. I didn't double tap. I just stared at it. Then closed the app. The woman who had once giggled at my expense in front of a rooftop party was now a cautionary tale. And I was free. But revenge wasn't over. No, not yet. I had one final move. Something she'd never expect. 3 months had passed since I erased her from the business. The brand thrived under its new name. Orders poured in. I gave interviews, launched a podcast, and told a story that resonated. Not about bitterness, but rebuilding. I became the image of calm resilience. People loved it. They didn't know they were watching a slow, calculated revenge unfold in real time. Kira, though, she was unraveling. She started showing up at places I went. Once at a small bookstore downtown. Another time at a fitness center I joined. The last was at a coffee shop where she stood in front of me like a ghost, tired eyes and trembling fingers gripping a paper cup. "I miss who we were," she whispered, eyes glossy. "You were home." "No," I said softly. "I was your fallback, your silent shield." "You still love me," she said, more question than a fact. "I loved who you pretended to be." That ended it. For a while. Then, one morning, a lawyer's letter landed in my inbox. She wanted to dispute the business rebranding. Claimed I used emotional manipulation to force her out. I smiled. She was desperate now. And I had receipts. Photos of her and Ethan days before she ever admitted to cheating. Screenshots of flirty messages, time-stamped and matched her call logs. Financial records showing I funded 92% of the startup. I sent my lawyer everything. Within a week, she dropped the case. But I wasn't satisfied. There was one thing she valued, even more than money. Her image. Her circle of influence. Her small but loyal group of friends and followers. And she still had them. Until I invited her to a formal business event. A trap. I knew she'd come. She thought it was a truce. A chance to rebrand herself publicly. Maybe even play the victim one last time. She wore white. She smiled wide. She didn't know I'd arranged a guest list that included every person who'd heard her rooftop, truth, or dare comment. Every old friend she'd ghosted. A projector screen waited behind me with receipts, timelines, and the real story. But I never had to show them. As I walked to the podium, I simply said, "Tonight is about clarity. About being honest with who we are when no one's watching. And who we become when someone finally does." I turned toward her once, just once. Her smile cracked. She knew. And she left. No scene. No scream. She just disappeared into the cold night. After that, she vanished from the public eye. Her Instagram went dark. Her name slowly faded from everything she once clung to. She called once, months later. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because the final move wasn't public humiliation. It wasn't court. It was this. She'd have to live with the fact that she'd lost not just me, not just the brand, not just her reputation, but the version of herself she ruined for someone who didn't even stay. Peace doesn't come loudly. It doesn't arrive with applause or grand gestures. It slips in like morning light, soft, unnoticed, but undeniable. It had been almost a year. The brand had grown beyond anything I expected. We expanded to new markets, picked up a distributor deal, and the name Gentry & Company was now tied to something clean, refined, and deeply personal. It no longer carried her shadow. Just mine. I moved out of our old neighborhood. Too many ghosts on that street. Bought a place in the hills. Quiet. Full of trees. Air that smelled like pine instead of perfume. I adopted a dog. Started making dinner again. For no one but me. And every night, I'd light one of my own candles. The same product line she once dismissed as a cute hobby. That scent became my ritual. Not because I needed comfort, but because I created it. One morning, while jogging through a familiar park trail, I passed a woman sitting on a bench. Thin, pale, sunglasses on, but I recognized her. Kira. She looked smaller somehow, like life had deflated her. She turned her head, just slightly as I passed. I didn't break stride. Neither did she. There was no wave, no smile, just silence. And that was enough, because I didn't need anything from her. Not an apology, not regret, not even acknowledgement. She no longer held any space in my life. Later that night, I journaled something simple. I thought revenge would make me feel powerful. But healing made me unstoppable. There was no great epiphany, no moment of fireworks or violins. Just me, sitting on my porch, sipping wine, and watching the sky shift from gold to navy, knowing I'd survived something that once threatened to ruin me. Kira had wanted attention, affection, validation. She burned everything to chase that feeling. And in the end, she stood with ashes, while I stood with a life rebuilt from truth. My truth, not built on manipulation or masks, but on a man who rose when he was supposed to fall. So if you ever find yourself broken by someone you trusted, remember this. Sometimes, the greatest revenge is simply becoming everything they said you'd never be. Free, focused, and finally, unreachable.